Hey guys, what's up? It is me, and I'm here with my new Templar PvP build. I'm calling this build Ghost, and it is a high DPS, high mobility Templar build. It works great for 1vx play, it works well for group play as well, but it does not work well for PvE. So let's jump right into it. So my character is a Nord Templar. For this build, my recommended races would be Redgaurd for an all-around powerful and well-sustained build, Orc for the hardest hitting version of this build, and then Imperial for a tankier and hard-hitting version of this build. And that's just because of the racial passives given. So my maximum magicka is sitting at just under 9k, my health is sitting at 16k. I know that is pretty low, but I'll go over that in a bit. And then I've got my stam sitting at 24.5k, and that's as high as I could push it with my race limitations. My magicka recovery is sitting at 1k with 500 health recovery as a stage 4 vampire. Not bad, right? And then I've got just about 1600 stam recovery on this build. My weapon damage is sitting at 2k unbuffed, and if I buff up with rally and a dodge roll, I'm sitting at 3k weapon damage, and that's with 38% weapon critical. And then while buffed, this build also boasts 18,400 spell resistance and just under 16,000 physical resistance. Alright, so I run the warrior boon on this build. I am a stage 4 vampire, and I also run the purple regeneration food. Alright, and now onto the gear. So this build uses 7 medium armor for its gear, and Greatsword and bow as its weapons. Alright, so for the trinkets, I am running a 3-piece of the Shadow Walker, which gives me weapon damage and maximum stamina. This build stacks max stamina and weapon damage, as well as weapon crit, so that's very important for me. On my trinkets, I have potion boost enchantments on them, and these are the gold enchants that give you the 3.5 seconds, and the reason that I'm using those enchants is because of the potions that I use with this build. I use the Panacea of Immovability, so it gives me 28.6 seconds of CC immunity, it gives me a health and stamina boost, and it also gives me a 20% boost to my health and stam regens. So what this potion will do for me in combat is give me almost 30 seconds of CC immunity, and this potion is on a 45-second cooldown. Now, this build is really squishy, and part of it being really squishy is that I can't be CC'd very often with it or I will die. So the potions work really well for this build. They allow you to go to that extent of squishiness and still stay alive in PvP. For my weapons, I have Greatsword and bow of the Night Silence. The Greatsword is sharpened with a reduce armor enchant on it, and the bow is weighted with a reduce armor enchant on it as well. The bow is weighted to decrease the amount of time that a heavy attack takes with it, and the Greatsword is sharpened because it's not really the heavy attack weapon of this build. And to match my Night Silence, Greatsword, and bow, I've got the shoulders of the Night Silence here, and I've put Impenetrable on these ones. And then finally, I would have a Helm of the Night Silence, because the Night Silence is a crafted set, but instead of the Night Silence Helm, I've gone with the Bloodspawn Mask simply for aesthetics, no other reason. And this works because the Bloodspawn Mask 1-piece set serves the same function as the 3-piece on Night Silence would. And then for the rest of my armor, I am running a 5-piece of the Skirmisher. All the Skirmisher pieces come in well fitted, and all of them have maximum stamina enchants on them. What the Skirmisher set gives me is my stamina recovery, weapon critical, maximum stamina, and then finally the Skirmisher's Bite. Roll dodging increases your weapon damage by 415 and weapon critical by 629 for 5 seconds. So this gives me about 415 weapon damage before that damage gets buffed, and then it gives me around 3 or 4% weapon critical as well. Now this set is a little bit expensive to get your hands on, but it's not as expensive as the Shadow Walker pieces. But it is a great endgame PvP set, as roll dodging is very important to PvP, especially for this build, and the amount of damage that it allows you to pump out is higher than any alternative crafting sets that you can make. For the skills for this build, I'm just going to briefly go over the passives. I have provided an ESO head link down below there, and the passives that you need for this build will be included in there, so any applicable passives will be in there. And now the skills for the build. So on my Greatsword bar, the first skill that I've chosen is Executioner. This is your general execute for the build. It hits very hard as your opponent's health starts to drop, and it also works to help increase your rally and vigor heals if your health drops below 18% as well. The next skill that I've chosen for my Greatsword is Critical Rush. I've chosen Critical Rush because it's an excellent gap closer and it can hit incredibly hard. The next skill that I've chosen is Repentance. I've chosen Repentance because it increases my regens passively by 10%, and as well I can pull stamina and health out of dead corpses on the battlefield. And the next skill that I've chosen is Rally. I've chosen Rally because it is an excellent heal. It is actually the primary heal for this build. Rally also increases your weapon damage by 20% and puts a great heal over time on you as well. They've changed Rally in a recent patch so that if you let the duration of Rally go for the 33 seconds, at the end of it, the big heal that you get will actually proc if you let the duration run out. Now the reason that I've chosen Rally for this build is because this build does use Mist Form. And what Mist Form will do is it'll stop your Magicka regen, and it'll stop all incoming healing that you receive. So using Rally as my primary heal, I'll use Rally and then I'll fight for a bit, and then when my health starts to drop, I'll go into Mist Form, and then as soon as I come out of Mist Form, I'll cast Rally again, and it gives me that nice chunky heal. They've also updated Rally to scale a little bit differently as you wait for the heal. If you wait for about 10 or 15 seconds, the heal that Rally gives you will be same to the one that you would get if you had waited 20 or 30 seconds. And finally on my Greatsword bar, I have Resolving Vigor. I've chosen Resolving Vigor because it is an excellent quick burst heal over time skill. It heals me for quite a lot, and it can heal my allies as well. Vigor is, however, a rank 10 Alliance War skill. So you have to get your Assault to rank 10 to get it, and I think that's around rank 24 Alliance War. So it is quite a difficult skill to get your hands on, especially if you don't PvP a lot, but don't panic too much, it's not a necessity for this build. If you don't have access to Vigor, you can replace it with a skill such as maybe Blazing Shield. You could also replace it with Bone Shield from the Undaunted skill line if you'd like to have a stamina costing skill as well. Vigor is kind of the backup heal for this build in case there's an oh shit moment. This is the emergency heal. If Rally doesn't have the healing potential to fix the situation, Vigor will usually be the backup heal. But you won't find yourself using Vigor very often with this setup. And then for the ultimate on my Greatsword bar, I am using Flawless Dawnbreaker. And I'm using Flawless Dawnbreaker for two reasons. Number one, it gives me the 8% weapon damage bonus, which is excellent. I want to hit as hard as I can. And number two, I'm using it because of the spike damage that it can deal. If you use Flawless Dawnbreaker, it has a bit of a cast time to it before it hits its target, but you can block cancel it. So if you click Flawless Dawnbreaker and then follow it with a block, as soon as you click that block button, the Dawnbreaker will hit, so you can increase how quickly it's casted if you block cancel it right away. Now on my bow bar, I've got Poison Injection. I'm using Poison Injection on this build to keep up a bit of the range pressure, also to put that deadly Poison Injection dot on that can tick and be the difference between the kill or no kill. The dot on Poison Injection deals increased damage over time as the opponent's health starts to drop. And I have Binding Javelin next on my bow bar. I'm using Binding Javelin over Magnum Shot for this build. I know that in past builds I've used Magnum Shot, but Binding Javelin got a stamina morph, and I've decided to use it because of that 3.5 second stun. It's a very quick javelin, you can cancel it to shoot very fast, and you can stun people coming out of mist with it. It's an incredibly powerful skill, and that is a deadly long stun as well, and it's a knockback. The reason that I've got Binding Javelin on my bow bar instead of on my Greatsword bar to increase my critical damage by 10% is because of how the combos of this build work. I just find it more comfortable doing the combos with Binding Javelin on my bow bar, and I figured that I can execute better combos this way, so the 10% bonus damage wasn't really worth it if I was just getting flatter base damage, or lower base damage anyway. And then the next skill on my bar is Elusive Mist. Now, Elusive Mist is one of the most incredible skills in this game. If you know a little bit about animation canceling, Elusive Mist will blow your socks off. It is one of the coolest skills to animation cancel in this game, and it really opens up an interesting playstyle for every class in this game. You can use Elusive Mist almost like you use Dark Cloak. if you do it right. So I'm going to do some PvP commentary afterwards, and in that commentary I will kind of go over Elusive Mist, and I will also include a bit of a segment talking about the different ways to cancel Elusive Mist. And then next on my bow bar, I've got Purifying Ritual. Purifying Ritual, as always, a staple in all of my Templar builds. I love my Purifying Ritual. I love to remove the negative effects, remove mark, dots, talons, whatever it is. Just clean it off of there. Purifying Ritual will also throw down a little ring that gives you a little bit of health over time. This build isn't a Magicka spec, so you won't be getting a ton of healing from it. The biggest thing that you get from Purifying Ritual is the Purge itself. And then the final skill on my bow bar is Channeled Focus. Now, Channeled Focus is an interesting skill, and it's quite integral to this build. The first reason that I'm using Channeled Focus is because while near the rune, you also gain 120 Magicka recovery every 0.5 seconds. So, regen in this game works on a 2-second tick timer. So 120 Magicka every 0.5 seconds means that you're increasing your Magicka regen by 480 just by casting Channeled Focus down. Channeled Focus also has a cost of 887 Magicka, making it incredibly cheap. And finally, the Magicka recovery bonus that Channeled Focus gives you does not go away if you leave the rune. You can run as far away as you want from it, and the Magicka recovery won't go away. Channeled Focus also gives you Major Resolve and Major Ward. So Major Resolve and Major Ward increase your armor and spell resistance by 5,120. Now these unfortunately do go away if you travel about 15 meters away from the rune. You'll lose this bonus, but it's not such a big deal because it has such a cheap cast time, and it is a buff that is so important to this build because of the amount of Magicka sustain that it can give you. And finally, I use Channel Focus because that 480 Magicka recovery stays active while you're in Mist form. So if you go into Mist form, it stops your Magicka recovery, and it stops your incoming healing. But if you throw Channeled Focus down and then go into Mist form, your Channeled Focus will still tick up your Magicka recovery. And then finally, the ultimate for my bow bar is Clouding Swarm. Clouding Swarm, as always, is one of the most deadly ultimates in the game, and it can be used in so many different ways. What Clouding Swarm does is it puts a massive AoE around you that deals 2,266 magic damage every 1 second, and it makes you invisible while you use it, and this lasts for 5 seconds. The invisibility in the swarm doesn't get broken if you attack someone, so you can have 5 seconds of pure aggression while in your Clouding Swarm and no one will be able to see you. You unfortunately can get hit by AoE while in the swarm. Although it won't take you out of swarm, it can kill you, so be careful. Alright guys, we are moving on to the champion system now. So we're going to start in the Thief Tree. So the passives in the Thief Tree aren't too terribly important. They're all kind of related to gathering stuff and PvE experiences. And this is a PvP build. In the Tower Tree, I've got 10 points in Magician to reduce the Magicka cost of spells by 4%. And then I have 10 points in Warlord to reduce the stamina cost of spells and abilities by 4%. In my Lover Tree, I have 10 points in Mooncalf, increasing my stamina recovery by 5%, and then I've got 10 points in Arcanist, increasing my Magicka recovery by 5%. And then in the Shadow, I've got 20 points into Tumbling, reducing the stamina cost of Roll Dodge and Break Free by 6.6%. So I've evened out my attributes fairly well in this tree, simply because I want to get the most bonus that I can out of them, and also I've stacked the Tumbling because it is such an important part of this build. Roll Dodge is incredibly important, and having a cheap Roll Dodge helps a lot. Alright, so in the Mage Tree, I've got 10 points in Apprentice, and those are in Blessed, which increases the effectiveness of any healing you initiate by 5%. This build is very reliant on the self-heals that you get from Rally, so increasing that spike self-heal and the heals over time, as well as increasing the healing from Vigor, is important to the build. I've got 10 points in the Atronach, increasing the damage of my light and heavy attacks with bows by 5%. Remember, my bow is weighted, and the reason that I've got it weighted is because of the combos that I use with it, and I'll be going over the combos in just a bit. So for the Ritual Tree, I have 14 in Mighty, 13 in Piercing, and 13 in Precise Strikes, and I've just equally distributed my stats through here because I do run quite a high crit chance. Mighty increases my physical damage, Piercing will increase the amount of armor my attacks ignore, and Precise Strikes will increase the critical damage of my attacks. Seeing as Crit Rush is a staple skill to this build, precise strikes is very important for it as well. And the important passive that this tree gives me access to is Perfect Strike. That's very important as it increases my critical rating by 12%, and that is a huge amount of crit. Alright, now let's take a look at the warrior tree. So under the steed, I have 10 in spell shield and 10 in resistant. Spell shield increases my spell resistance, while resistant reduces the amount of critical damage I take. In the lady, I've got 20 in elemental defender and 10 in hardy. So hardy reduces the magic damage I take by 5%, and elemental defender reduces the flame, frost, and shock damage taken by me. The reason that I have so many points into magic resist and elemental resistance is because I am a vampire. An 8.1% reduction in the amount of flame damage I take is a pretty big deal, so it's very important to this build, as being a squishy vampire is scary. In PvP, you can get blown up so quickly by a flame lash. And the important passives that the lady gives me access to is Spell Absorption, restore 3,360 magicka when you take Flame, Frost, Shock, Magic, Earth, or Oblivion damage equivalent to 30% of your maximum health. Seeing as this build has very low max health, this procs quite often. And then finally Resistant, which restores 162 health when you are hit by a critical hit. And then in the Lord tree, I have 10 points in Quick Recovery, which increases the effectiveness of healing received by 4%. As I mentioned before, healing is very important for this build, and this also gives me access to the passive Field Physician, reduces damage received while resurrecting another player by 15%. That's actually very important for this build, as this build makes an excellent team reser. Alright guys, we're going to go over a little bit of combos and canceling. Now, this build is an interesting PvP build as it is very, very, very squishy and it's very fast. So the point of this build isn't necessarily to be tanky, it's more to not get hit with your guard down. As this build does run immovability pots, it makes you hard to CC, so you're able to react to things very quickly. On top of that, being in mist form doesn't allow your opponents to CC you, however, you are still susceptible to snares and immobilize. Mist Form's an interesting skill for this build as it offers kind of a magicka survival to a stamina build. So if I throw down Channeled Focus, I can stay in Mist Form and you see how my magicka regen will still tick because of my Channeled Focus. So it allows me to pump out mists when I really need them. Mist Form is also an interesting skill because you have how you can cancel it. You can cancel mist in a lot of different ways. The first way to cancel mist is by blocking. The next way to cancel mist is by weapon swapping. And finally, you can cancel mist with a dodge roll. So what are the advantages of canceling your own mist form? There are actually quite a few advantages. In PvP, especially fighting another opponent, if you go into mist form, what it does is take the chevron off of your head, making you untargetable unless they have you tab targeted. Now, if they have you tab targeted, you still take much less damage while in mist form. Also, canceling your own mist allows you to come out of mist at an unexpected time for your opponent. Changing directions after you enter mist form is also a great way to use it, as it is a very fast skill. If I'm coming over a cliff like this and I go into mist, and then I circle around and break my own mist and I can jump back the other way. Now, that may not look so great in PvE, but in a PvP environment, jumping over top of someone is a great way to have them a little bit confused as to where you are. The important thing about this build is remembering to keep your channeled focus down, as your mist form is pretty much your lifesaver for the build. This build doesn't function so well if you don't take advantage of mist form to stay mobile and soak up some damage, as you have a very, very small hit point pool. So let's go over some of the combos that this build uses. So I mentioned that I have weighted on my bow. The reason that I have a weighted bow is because I like to charge the heavy attacks with it. As you saw earlier, I can cancel mist in many different ways. One of my favorite things to do is to pop out of mist form, jump in the air, and then charge up a bow heavy attack as I'm moving through the air. The advantage of this is it allows me to charge up this high damage attack while moving quickly through the air, making me difficult to target. Now you can cancel your bow heavy attack by either using a skill on your bow bar, such as Poison Injection or the Javelin. Or you can cancel your bow heavy attack with a weapon swap and use a skill on your Greatsword bar. So what this allows me to do is land pretty high damage combos relatively quickly. You can see me charge the bow heavy and then follow it with a critical rush, doing just over 13k damage there. So the reason this mist cancel is so useful is because you can break the mist early and follow it up with a javelin, and you can usually catch people off guard. So what this allows me to do is break my mist early and follow it up with a javelin and a little dodge roll to boost my damage, and then I can do a quick crit rush combo and drop my opponent. And finally, I did mention canceling Flawless Dawnbreaker, and I thought I'd go over that a little bit. Now, Flawless Dawnbreaker usually has a cast time, and I'm going to show you that cast time right now. So that's the normal cast time of Flawless Dawnbreaker. You saw me lift the sword, and it was rather clunky. And if you block cancel your Flawless Dawnbreaker, it'll look a little bit like this. And you see how I just kind of lifted the sword up really quick, but the light shot out from my feet right away. And that was just because I clicked block. Alright, let's jump into a little bit of PvP commentary. So, I enter this fight here, and I see the Sorc ride in on his horse, and he rides by and starts bolting, and this Templar comes out and starts attacking me as well. So I get the first hit on him, and then I run away from him, trying to kite him back towards these rocks. He starts spamming the jabs, and I go right into my bat swarm. He charges into it, and I get a great stun off on him with the javelin, and finish him off with a crit rush to Executioner there, leaving me to fight this Sorc alone. Now, Sorc's a difficult fight, as always, because they are really tanky, and they are pretty difficult to kill. My favorite strategy to use while fighting a Sorc is to kind of kite around them, throw javelins at them, and drain their stamina. It's the easiest way to get a kill off on them, and also take advantage of Mist Form. And you see me using Purge and Mist Form to counter his Daedric Curse and his detonation. Mist Form is great because once the detonation or curse is about to explode, you can enter Mist Form and take a lot less damage from it, as it is very predictable burst. So I see another player ride up, and it's a DK, and I crit rush into him, and then I throw the javelin, and I mess up the swap, so I end up throwing two javelins at him. I see the curse and the detonation about to go off, and I quickly missed it to take the damage from it, enter my Clouding Swarm, charge up the bow heavy, and I decide to target the Sorc as he's not in my swarm, so he's not really expecting it, and I get an excellent burst off on him, and I'm left just to fight this DK. I get a good stun off on him there, and I'm just channeling bow heavies, letting my injection dot do its work, and I finish him off with a heavy attack to Executioner right there. Alright, so in this next fight, I see a couple AD players ride by, and one of them gets off their horse to fight me, and it's a Sorc, so the first thing I do is I land a stun on him, and I start putting some heavy pressure into him. I see that he doesn't have very many hit points, so if I can bring his wards down, I can deal a fair amount of damage to him. Another Sorc shows up and starts attacking me, so you see me using Mist and Dodge Roll here to do my best to prevent incoming damage from the other Sorc. I put a lot of pressure into the first Sorc, but I'm not able to take him down. His wards end up saving him, so I kite behind the rock, as I did take a little bit of damage from the other Sorc. So I start attacking the V3. I decide that I'm going to target this guy, as he's probably going to be a little bit easier to kill than the V14, and then a Templar shows up, and he starts spamming Wrecking Blow and Biting Jabs, so he is my first target. I go into my swarm, and I knock him back with a lethal crit rush takedown following it. And then I see another player running by, and I end up taking him down as well, almost killing myself doing it. So I decide to kite back behind this tree, heal up with that fat rally heal, and then I continue to fight these guys. So at this point, I continue to put pressure onto this Sorc, thinking that I might be able to take him down. I get him really close again, but it ends up not working out, and I take too much damage, so I have to pull back a little bit. I'm very low on stamina now, so I decide that I need to enter my Clouding Swarm as soon as possible, and I decide to go for a kill on this other player here. I end up not getting the javelin knockback on her, so I decide to turn around and head back behind the rocks, noticing that there's a lot of AD players on me now. So I'm in a pretty bad situation here. I'm fairly low resources. I'm completely out of magicka, so I can't use my Mist Form. I decide to run back through them, dodge rolling through them, just blowing through my stamina pool, unfortunately, but I have to do it if I want to survive. And I keep rolling until I can get the mist, and I end up misting up to these rocks here. I decide to come up here, as the rocks here are a little bit less large, and it's a little bit easier to kite people here, as I can move really quickly in between the tight spaces, especially the little trees. I get a good knockback and damage into that guy on the rock there, but I end up having too much attention dragged to me there, so I decide to go back up on top, and I enter my swarm. After entering my swarm, I decide to target Buzzkill again, but he he bolts away, and I see the V3 that's almost dead from my javelin before, and I get him with a crit rush. I decide to kite back behind these rocks, and I rebuff, and I wait for my opponents to come follow me. I get the Nightblade on top of me, and I get him with a javelin coming out of mist form. But I do have a lot of pressure coming from the top of the rock there, so I decide to circle back around, and my resources are kind of coming back up. My stamina not so much, but I've managed to get my magicka back up, so I have my emergency mists if I need them. So at this point, I'm trying to kind of field fight these guys as they kind of don't know where I am, and I throw the javelin and they all pounce on me at the same time, and I end up getting killed. Alright, so in this fight here, I end up riding into a group of DC players. I don't know how I ran into them, but my first instinct is I have to swarm and then try to kill one of them, and it doesn't go so well. Now this maybe wasn't the best idea, as that pissed all of them off, so they're going to chase me for a while here. I decide that I need to get away. I see the Templar spamming Radiant on me, and I don't want to take too much of his Radiant Beam. As long as my health stays high, I should be okay. So while kiting these guys, to counter the Radiant, I'm using Purge and I'm using Mist Form just to get away far enough that I break the line of sight for the Radiant. It has a 36-meter range, so if I can get out of range of his Radiant Beam, it'll be okay. I try to burst that Sork there, and it doesn't work out. I know the Radiant's coming, so the first thing that I do is I start running back again, because I don't want to get killed by that beam. Another Sork continues to chase me here, and I get a decent amount of damage off on him, and I almost get him too, but the Radiant Beam continues to follow me, so I decide I have to keep backing up, as the beam will be the end of me if I drop to around 40% health. So these guys have kind of decided that I'm not really worth chasing at this point, and what they're going to do is they're going to come here and start to set up siege. I decide, since I have a swarm up, to re-engage these guys. I go for the healer, hoping I can get her down, and I get an excellent burst off on her, and I manage to take her down through her heals. I see the Radiant Beam, and I try to bash the guy, but he jumps over top of me, so I miss my bash, and I eat a Crystal Shards there, and it nearly kills me. Thank God for that huge rally heal to save me, or that would have been the end of that fight. So I decide, after taking the pressure, that I'm going to come up over these hills. When I'm in the hills, I can use them to my advantage and kind of spread my opponents out and really mitigate how much damage I take as well. I see another player riding in on their horse, and I charge in, and I try to kill her, but she ends up cloaking and getting away, so I'm stuck alone on this hill. Seeing that they've set siege up, I decide that I need to do my job for the Pact and help defend this keep. I enter my swarm again, and I decide to burst the same healer, as it was a pretty squishy healer, and the burst is easier this time as no one's healing him. The Templars start spamming the spears right away. I decide to throw a javelin into him and try to put some pressure into him. My primary target right now is to take all the Templars in this group down, as the Radiant Destruction is something that can be very difficult for me, and also the healing will make playing this build very hard for me as well. You see me taking tons of pressure from the Radiants there. I purge them to get away, and then I back up along here, just using my speed to kind of get away from these guys. My plan is to try to get a few of them to follow me so I can pick them off one or two at a time, making the fight a lot easier for me. A few of them do follow out, and I go in for the attack, but he puts his shield up and he's ready for it right away, so I decide to back up again and see how far I can drag these guys out. So they've made the conscious decision not to follow me out here alone, which is probably a good idea, as they would be playing in my territory if I managed to pull them out to the guards. They decide to back up, so I put the pressure on them yet again, and the Templar's quick to the shield. He doesn't pop any heals, but he is quick to make sure that I'm not going to be able to take him down. I go into the swarm trying to burst someone down, but I get no luck in it. I don't get a good knockback, and I don't deal any kind of good damage, so I decide to pull back up to the hill and just plunk some arrows into these guys. I'm just trying to be a nuisance at this point. I see that the NPCs have engaged as well, so I want to get involved in this fight, and I want to try to take these guys down. One of them decides to follow me up the hill, and I get a great knockback on him, and I manage to take him down. Now, I was able to kill that guy in an ideal position, as this is kind of my part of this fight up by the rocks there, so he's not going to be getting an easy res. I go in for the burst on this Templar, and he manages to survive it, but I do have a swarm up, and I go right into my clouding swarm. Noticing that these guys are getting hit by siege, I want to do my best to take them down. There's quite a few of them here, and the extra siege will be the help that I need if I want to have a chance of wiping these guys. I see them already going for reses, so I get the interrupt on the res there, and I have a lot of pressure on me here now, so I decide to pull back up to the hill again, just misting out of there. I don't want to pull too far away, however. I want to keep a little bit of pressure on these guys as I do want them to follow me. So I'm just plunking a few arrows into them, and they decide that a couple of them are going to follow me up here, and I purge the crystal shards there, as you see, and I'm standing up at the top of this hill now, and I see my target. I decide that I want to go for the Templar yet again, as Templar is the ideal choice for taking out a group. You always want to kill the Templars first, unless there's a super high DPS class that's hitting you and you need to take care of them first. So after getting the kill on that Templar, I'm taking a ton of pressure from these guys, and the Sork and the Nightblade managed to take me down. The concealed weapons got me through the roll. And for this last clip here, it's just a little bit of solo play, and then it ends up ending with a little bit of a duo with me and Benzie. So I see a few players up there. I decide to buff up behind the tree so they can't see me. I engage this guy here. I throw the javelin at him, giving the knockback, and the rest of them decide to pop out of stealth. Seeing them pop out of stealth, the first thing that I do is mist form, reposition, and then I toss another javelin. I eat a nasty crystal shard there, so I decide that I need to pull back behind these guys and go into my swarm. Once I enter my swarm, I do see the Radiant Destruction on me. I purge it right away, and then I continue to attack these guys in swarm. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to put any kind of good pressure into these guys, so I decide to kite back behind this tree here. I throw the javelin at her and get a boost coming off of that tree, not sure why, and I decide to try to take her down, but I get interrupted in the middle of my combo, and I end up not being able to get the finish on her. So I decide to pull back around behind these guys, using the trees always to my advantage. I'm changing directions as often as I can. You see there, they finally get an idea of where I am, and I take a huge amount of damage from that Magicka death. So I decide that I need to kite back around this tree, rebuff, and re-engage with these guys. I'm using mist form as best I can to hide my chevron when I'm moving around. I don't really want them to know where I am, and you see me doing my best to lose these guys. And as soon as my swarm comes up, I put an interrupt into that player, and I decide that I need to go for the kill, and I need to be aggressive in my swarm. I end up getting the kill off on her, and I pull back behind this rock here, knowing that I'm not going to be able to finalize that kill as she's gotten revived right away. So I continue to fight these guys. I'm using the rocks as best I can. I know that the group isn't a group that I can fight by myself, and I know that I'm not going to be able to beat these guys, so I decide to do my best to just kind of kite them and wait for Benzie to come in. I know he's heading this way, I just don't know when he's going to get here. And the EP player on the side there looked at me, and he's probably like, this guy's doomed, so I'm not going to jump in to try to help him. I don't blame him. There's a lot of people chasing me. So at this point, I'm pretty much just trying to run away from these guys because they're doing a lot of damage to me. And then Benzie jumps in. As soon as Benzie jumps in, I turn around, and I decide that we need to pressure these guys. Benzie just does a ton of damage to one of them. We manage to take him down, and I'm just, at this point, trying to synchronize my targets with whatever Benzie's hitting. He's doing the primary amount of burst, and I'm just trying to help him finish off whatever he decides he needs to take down. So what we're doing here is Benzie's on a Nightblade, so he's utilizing stealth, and I'm utilizing mist form, and we're kind of circling around these guys. We're being incredibly pesky, incredibly difficult to lock down and hit, and we're also doing our best to prevent them from getting reses. You see me get the attack on that guy and the interrupt there. Now, knowing that I won't be able to burst the Sork, I decide that I'm going to go for Benzie's target. I go for the Flawless, not expecting for my crit rush to kill him, but the crit rush does get the kill, so I continue to converge on the targets with Benzie. One by one, we take them down, and then it's nothing but the Sork left, and our combined burst is enough to take him down. Alright guys, that is the end of my ghost build video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section below, and I will answer it as soon as I can get to it. If you liked this video, feel free to check out the rest of my channel. Feel free to hit like and subscribe if you thought it was worth the like and subscribe. If you guys want to see some live footage, I play on Twitch quite often. You can check me out on Twitch. The link's in the bottom in the description there. And you can also follow me on Twitter for updates about my Twitch feeds, any of the artwork that I do, etc. I do all of my own artwork and editing for my videos. And I do some of the drawings live on Twitch as well if you guys want to check that out. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great time.